I think you open the book when you say your drive is all you want fans to know is that care has been taken. And
Well,
with your lyrics, with your writing, with everything, you just want to know
yeah,
that you've taken the utmost care in it.
it's probably an unfashionable word, care, but I really would like that to be the case in all of our music that's written and recorded, in our live performances, and certainly anything I put my name to in terms of prose writing or any other enterprise. It's going to get as much care as I can and be as good as I can possibly make it. And I kind of think that's a big element of why the band has survived always as a live entity, because that commitment and the conviction of believing in what we were doing was present at every show we ever played, whether it was a 20-minute opening slot on a 5-act show, to our first headlining and all that. Honestly, I can say among the three of us, we have never played a show that was less than all we had.
Right.
The hockey, leave it all on the ice. We always left it all on the stage because it's the way we're made. That was the level of professionalism, and it was unimaginable to soft pedal, or bands that we'd opened for in the old days, and the drummer would say, "Oh yeah, I kind of take it easy up to my solo." It's like unimaginable to me. What? To play any song without 100% engagement is unimaginable. But I would hear those stories, and we were lucky to be an opening act band for a long time because we learned a lot of cautionary tales about what not to do, from being in those positions.
Another thing you write about is, I guess that which leads me to what took so long to get inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame. But you also talk about that induction and playing with this next generation of peers.
Yeah.
It must have been surreal to kind of see this next generation of people who are openly citing your influence on them.
Yeah, and even got another generation now. Taylor Hawkins, the drummer for the Foo Fighters, has become quite a good friend of mine, and he has a picture of his son now playing drums in front of a banner of me taken in 1980. One of the old Tama ads was a famous cloth banner of my red Tama drums, and that was a big inspiration to Taylor when he was a kid. So he found one of those on eBay, and now it's in his son's room. Nice. And I got a picture of him with the son holding up his drumsticks to that banner. So there were 3 generations down now.
When lists come out of the greatest drummers, you're always near the top or at the very top. And I wonder, at what point with so many people saying how influential you are, at what point did you start to believe it?
At the influence, inspiration, I think, is the rewarding thing. And when people come up and say something like that, you influenced me to play drums, I say, apologize to your parents for me. And music is certainly about sharing your enthusiasm. And the nature of Rush is we love our music, and we hope other people will like it too. There's nothing calculated more than that about it. And in the writing too, these are things that I was moved to write about and to craft carefully enough that I hope I can share with a reader. And if you do infect them with your fire. Oh, that's good. Enthusiasm. The literal meaning of enthusiasm is infected with the God. And if you can share that God of yours, that fire of yours, to light someone else's, that's a great thing too.
So when you get to that point where people are putting you on a pedestal, do you feel like as if, okay, now I can just do whatever I want and it will be highly regarded? Or does it push you more to be like, I have to be better now?
Absolutely does. It's a responsibility. I think it's a privilege to be a professional artist in the world and to be celebrated and paid for hitting things with sticks. So I take that as truly as a responsibility. And when I take on another challenge like the big band stuff, was to challenge me and also to dedicate myself to the art of drumming, to celebrating the great big band music and drumming being such a big part of that. When drum sets first came around, up until like in the last 4 or 5 years ago, I was studying with Peter Erskine again, wanting to take my drumming in another direction. When I went to visit him for the first time, I said to him, okay, look, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a butcher and you're a surgeon. And he said, you're not a butcher. I said, yeah, I'm a good butcher, but I like to get a little more surgery into my playing. And he has that kind of delicate, very highly schooled, and he's a brilliant teacher and all that. So it fed my playing in a way I couldn't have expected. So that's part of I felt a responsibility to keep trying to refine and improve. But the reward I got from that, and the lesson path that he drew me along was one thing in the practicing that I did, but it gave me a gift that was all unexpected by me, and I'm sure by him too, of improvisation and freedom from time and all that is so rewarding and makes all of that so worthwhile. So it is something that I do feel a responsibility to live up to, and I don't by any means take any of that as for granted, because there are probably a million best drummers in the world, and a lot of them playing stuff that I couldn't play,
Well, and it's interesting, like when you reached a point in your career where it seems as if, all right, like you're at this top, then that's when you decide to redraw everything and go back and do lessons. And why, I guess maybe talk about that shift of going, you just, at that point, you decide to shift your playing
Yeah,
style.
it becomes, it's kind of dissatisfaction that you can either get cynical about and said, this is what I got, or else you can say, well, I'd like to learn more. I'd like to make my, two good examples. In the mid-90s, I felt my drumming was getting too stiff because I'd been working with sequencers and metronomes, and I had learned to do that and control it. And when you've got a click pounding in your head, you can learn to push that and pull that and have a kind of liberation about it, because you still are in accurate time, but you get that, but it's very deliberate to do that, and it's very cerebral. And I was just getting physically stiff. And the teacher I got at that time, Freddie Gruber, was all about motion. And he just took my playing apart and put it back together with a much more fluid, natural motion. And that had a musical effect. You know, it was a physical reinvention, but it made me play the instrument differently, approach it differently, strike each one differently, and completely changed my inner clock, as my bandmates learned when we started, you know, making new music together. And then with Peter, it was really, I wanted to, I'd grown up as a rock drummer from day one. It was rock. I played along with the radio, always rock. But I love swing drumming. I love big band drumming, especially the ensemble nature of it. Of like the drummer pulls the trigger and the cannon goes off. So I wanted to learn more about that, and that was my purpose. But like I said, the result was quite other and quite greater than what I expected.
I mean, you mentioned improv, and you mentioned the word cerebral, which is how a lot of people would describe your music as well. So I wonder how much room there is for improv in the writing, because the composition of the music seems so intentional, I guess. But on the live show, is there any room for improv?
Oh, more and more over time, but again, by design.
And between the drummer and the bass is like that is the relationship between feeding off each other and.
Well, no, there's specific choices in time. In the early days, we recorded all of us together in the studio over and over, working out, usually writing the song at the same time as arranging it and working on our parts. So by that repetition, I made super detailed drum parts that were compositional, and I considered myself a compositional drummer. And my first teacher, Freddie Gruber, tell me that you compose. I can see you compose when you're playing, and that was nice. But then I thought, well, I want to be improvisational. I didn't want to be limited by that. It's a nice thing, and it served me well through all those times. And so many of the kind of iconic Rush tracks were composed, every detail, and to play those live, I'm very happy just to reproduce those detail by detail. That's challenge enough. A song like Tom Sawyer will never be easy to play and will always be satisfying to play well. No problem, right? I don't care how many hundreds of times I should live to play that song. It will never be easy, and it will always be satisfying to do it well. But in modern times, after studying with Peter, the last two records, for example, have been completely improvised. I would go in and just try, I would play along with a demo of the song a few times just to see what might work, and then call the producer and said, let's start recording. And had developed the freedom of time sense through studying with Peter Erskine to be able to do that. And what a revelation. And then sometimes those improvised parts, you can take sections of it and put those all together into a master performance that was all only done once. And I think you can hear it. You can hear that I got it into a crazy drum fill, and the listener has to be going, oh, is he going to make it? And then when I get back to one, it's like, oh, so satisfying because of tension and release, right? One of the elements of drama, especially in music, tension and release. So to introduce that into each element of my drumming, and maybe that does become a fixed part that in most cases, from Clockwork Angels and Snakes and Arrows songs, I did want to learn those because they were created that spontaneously and put together from moments that only happen once. But when there's a master performance there, I'm quite happy in most cases to learn that. But in soloing, I became almost completely improvisational in recent years.
Well, what a major shift in style for a band too, to do this one way for so long and then to be like, let's try it improv.
Well, that's how we survive, I think.
By always growing on moving forward, I guess. You write in your book, because you're talking about the art of writing, you say and writing and planning routes and everything, you say magic exists, but often requires some planning. But you were talking about writing. I think it seems to also apply to the music even. Like you have some planning, but then there's that room for improv.
Well said, absolutely so. Yeah, all that effort of study. The early records that the three of us made together, we were experimenting. We were learning how to play our instruments. We were learning how to write songs. We were learning how to arrange, especially through, say, Farewell to King's Hemispheres. We were learning so much about arrangement and orchestration in the sense of a three-piece rock band. And all of that gathered together. And then by, say, like Moving Pictures 1980, so we've been together 6 years by that time. And then we gelled, and all of those studies, all those courses of study that we went through together, with pure innocence and pure enthusiasm, suddenly they became a unified approach that moving pictures and from then on carried for us. And then as that time, even from that time, we continued to experiment absolutely with different kinds of songs, different kind of arrangements, orchestrations of all kinds, different producers. There's another good example. You can get comfortable working with the same producer, and some people do their whole career, but we always felt we wanted a new brains to pick and new criticisms, new enthusiasms, just new opinions even.
I heard you once say that you wished Moving Pictures was your first album.
Yeah, sure.
And there's a lot of tracks before Moving Pictures too.
And a lot of them I like, and a smile of indulgence now. It's nothing bitter about it.
Yeah.
It's just like in prose writing is a perfect example. I spent 20 years learning before I had to publish my first book, and that's so much better because anything I wrote before that was experimental or learning, and it was sloppy and all over the shop and not focused on the reader or the voice or anything like that I eventually learned after 20 years. So that's merely a matter of saying that by the time we learned to be a band, it was Moving Pictures, but there's lots of stuff before that I like, and even the quirky off the wall stuff I like I laugh at with a smile. You know, there's nothing bitter about it, but it's just that it would be nice to serve your apprenticeship first, as most professions allow, instead of in public.
Now you mentioned just shift in like lyrical inspiration too with the early stuff. You're always influenced heavily by books and literature. Do you have anything that you look back on sometimes and it makes you, I don't know, laugh or grimace or be like, what was I thinking when I wrote
No, honestly, with an indulgent smile sometimes, you know. I'm glad to say that I can stand behind anything that I said or wrote in those times. I could say or write it better now, and that's the part that makes me, you know, have a little embarrassed smile maybe about it, because it's the craft that I've evolved. But
how has your literary inspirations changed then from early days to now? Like, do you still look to books the same way, or does your writing, does your travel, looking inward, does that determine your writing more now?
It's become anything more reflective about human nature, I guess, became my long-term course of study. And where early times there was playing around with fantasy and playing around with science fiction as vehicles, and even that endures. Clockwork Angels is, you know, a steampunk epic full of bizarre technology and an alternate universe and timelines and all this stuff, but it's a human story. And when Kevin Anderson and I were working out the novel version of it, we took episodes from our lives and our youth and worked them into the story as parts of it. So it's very much a human story.
Now, you mentioned the writing with Kevin of Clockwork Angels, it's interesting because it's an album and a steampunk fantasy novel. And Kevin mentioned that Grace Under Pressure inspired him to write a book. So it's going both ways.
And we had known each other for 20 years and always wanted to do some hybrid combination. He was working on a story that he thought I could do songs and lyrics to go along with, and none of that came to pass. And both of us have said we could not have created this story separately or together at that time. It took this element of maturity as artists and as human beings and as husbands and dads and all that, parts of life that form you. And now we're working on the graphic novel version of that, which was another fantastic adventure into the remarkably thriving world of comics now. It's not only commercially happening as a print media, after all, but it's artistically just full of exciting young people doing amazing things, more and more women coming into it, and it's like an exciting little creative microcosm that's healthy economically too. So being part of that and creating the graphic novel version of the story has also been really rewarding.
I read an anecdote about you. When Max Webster was opening for you, you would get on your drum kit under the covers and drum along to their music.
To Gary, yeah.
Do you still do that?
Oh, you don't have an opening act?
No opening act, but how long did you do that for? Like, was it only Max Webster?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it.
But another beautiful one was when the band Primus opened for us on a tour in the mid-'90s, I guess. Every single day after dinner, we got together in one of our dressing rooms or tuning rooms and had jam session. And the two guitar players were bringing like accordions and flutes, and we were playing on bicycle frames. And the rule was you were supposed to play an instrument that was not yours. Right. So you know, the other guys would be playing drums, and it was just an ad hoc thing that became a ritual, like every single day. So those kind of relations did exist, but then since that time we haven't had opening acts. So.
Hey, I'm Talia Schlanger, your host on CBC Radio 2 Weekend Mornings. Friends don't let friends miss out on awesome music videos. So if you like this one, share it with a pal. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below.